And then you have colleges who are really good at shaming parents into saying, if you don't come our way, your kid's destined for late night McDonald's shifts. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's such a misleading concept, but
Well, it's frankly, I'm gonna say it's a lie. It's the colleges are lying to
it is.
all of us. Bootstrapped Unicorns, we are back. And if my count is right, this is episode 20. And interesting fact, did you know that only 1% of podcasts even make it to episode 20? So we're a 1%er. Isn't that outstanding? And in celebration of number 20, I have a national best-selling author on named Ken Rusk. Who's Ken Rusk? Well, you're going to find out all about him because we're going to spend a lot of time just chewing the fat. But I will tell you, I have read his book, and Blue Collar Cash is near and dear to my heart. If you followed me at all, you know that the skills gap and the disconnect in our culture between the work that has to be done and the available skills and interest in that work is so broad and so saddening that it's people like Ken who are going to help our culture fix the problem. And so I'm thrilled with this. But entrepreneurs, this episode is very much for you because he is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, bootstrapped the heck out of creating a true unicorn. And he's got some things, by the way, we're going to talk about parenting in this as well. You know how close that is to my heart. And I've got a really serious question to ask him about entrepreneurship and parenting. So you need to stay in. If you've got kids or your key employees have children, you have to listen to this whole episode because I'm promising you already that an answer to an important question for you and for me is about to hit. So without further ado, and without adding too much pressure, Ken, welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns. I am thrilled that we're hanging out.
Good morning, Josh. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So Ken, let's help our audience real quick. Let's get a baseline before we talk about the book and before we start just going down and meandering down important roads. Can you give me the 1 minute, like, you know, who are you as an entrepreneur, and maybe an additional couple of seconds about who you are just as a person?
Well, sure. So again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. The best way to get from then to now is basically this. My high school shared a fence with an industrial park, and there was a hole in that fence that we used to cut through to go hang out at the carry out after school. That's when I was 15 years old. And I just remember going through this hole in the fence, walking through this industrial park to get to this carry out. And there was always these cool businesses that were hustling and bustling, equipment, people running around, grown up Tonka toys, all that kind of stuff, backhoes and whatever. And I always thought, well, that's kind of cool. I like being outside. I like working with my hands. My father taught me how to plant trees at a very young age. And I just loved doing that stuff. So one day I went in, I knew someone that worked there, and I said, hey, what do you guys do for a living? They said, we dig ditches. I said, well, I'm certainly qualified to do that. So I started digging ditches at 15. I needed money for my first used car, take my girlfriend out for pizza, go bowling with my buddies, whatever, right? So I did that in the summer times. And then in the winter times, I would work in the office when I was in school. So I would cut through the fence and go into the office and work. So I kind of learned the front and the back half of the office, if you will. When I got to be 18, it was like college or what? What am I going to do, right? So the owner came to me and said, listen, we're so busy, we're expanding. We want to open these franchises around the Midwest. You seem like a good candidate because you know both sides of our world here. So I did that. I lived out of a suitcase from 18 to like 24 or 23. And I opened up franchises in Columbus, Chicago, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, all over the place. And then it finally came time for me to start my own thing because, living out of a suitcase for a long period of time is no fun, as you know. And
Oh yeah.
so I came to Toledo. I opened up my office in 86, started with 6 people, and I think we have nearly 200 today. And we've expanded into not only fixing foundations, but we build houses and we build office buildings, and we're in construction chemicals and all kinds of ancillary things, but connected. And so it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so you started with a franchise then. I mean, this is a franchise business, but you grew beyond the walls of the franchise, as it were.
Correct. Yeah. When you spend a lot of time helping other people that have never even been to your company before, when you spend a lot of time, incubating their businesses from scratch and then handing them off to those people, you get to the point where you're like, why am I not doing this for myself, right? So
Yeah.
it was that simple. It was a natural progression, and to be able to open my own company and look around and go, okay, guys, we got 50 grand in a loan and about 90 days to get this right. So let's go.
Wow.
And
I was just going to ask you about financing. I mean, so my imagination at your age in this story and the amount of work that you're doing on the road, my guess is that your savings is not one of those remarkable, figures where you could just self-finance your way into it. So is that did you do an SBA loan? Is that how you got into it?
we literally went to a local bank because I had been in this business now for 8 years, right? So we went into a local bank and they gave us a $50,000 credit line, but we weren't allowed to buy anything major like trucks or anything big until we had the work for it. So we
Wow.
literally had to go in and create sales, create a backlog, and then we could go and start buying trucks and equipment and that kind of thing. So we very quickly established a 6-week backlog, and that was enough for us to trigger buying equipment. And then we did that. And I think we started with 2 trucks. And I hate to say this, but at my last count, I was meeting with my insurance agent the other day, and he said, you're up to 42 vehicles now. And I'm like, oh my God. I didn't think we had 32, but yeah, somehow it ended up being 42. So
That's outstanding. How frenetic did that feel when you were, in 1986, $50,000, creating a backlog of work that you now have to deliver on? You own no equipment to deliver on it yet, but you think maybe you could pull off getting it. Like I'm getting agita. I'm a New Yorker who spent a lot of time around Italians, and so that agita, for anybody who's watching, is like I'm getting nervous just thinking about that. What was life like when you were doing that?
well, I think the thing was because I had done it. I mean, when you're in Chicago and you're, 18, 19 years old, and you have to go up against a 240-pound union plumber, okay,
Mm,
who
yeah.
doesn't care who you are, doesn't care what you want to do, and it's January, and you're all of 5'5", 140 pounds, and you have to tell him what you want done. You get pretty battle hardened in a hurry, okay? So going out and getting that, having that loan grow, and saying, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on all the car dealerships around here to see who's got a dump truck on the floor. Okay, so who's got it in the lot? That was kind of the thing. So we really kind of kept our eyes open the entire time, and then we kind of warned them that, hey, we're trying to get to a point where we're going to buy that truck in like 3 more weeks. And then bam, it happened, and then there came the jackhammers and the shovels and the pipe and everything else. And then we went and installed our first from that loan that we had accumulated. We hadn't used it all. I think we were at like 35,000 at the time, and then we started winding that backwards. So it was challenging, but I don't think I feared it as much as I respected the process and just wanted to make it work.
Yeah, and I guess 8 years time in the industry really is an interesting pre-qualifier for entering the business then, because I talk to a lot of business brokers. We actually have a partnership with a business broker, and one of the things I'm learning in those conversations, it seems like as sellers of a business are auditioning the future buyer of that business and the financiers who are going to help broker the deal, they're looking for relevant experience that makes them believe that this new buyer is going to be able to succeed in the business because for whatever reason, they've been in the trenches enough that it's believable they can continue the business on. So I feel like you had a very unique opportunity in that you were probably more trained for that transition than anybody on the planet.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because all my buddies were going to college. I mean, I shouldn't say all of them, but like I remember an econ class in like 10th grade. the teacher said, raise your hand if you're going to college. I think only half of us raised our hand at the time, Josh. So,
Yeah.
but it was interesting because I kind of looked at this as my college. I mean,
You dropped out, right?
you're going to, what's that?
You strategically, in your book, I think I remember seeing that you and your dad talked about you withdrawing from college. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually went to Akron University for about 3 weeks, and I just, I knew it wasn't for me, and
Mm.
I had this opportunity come up at the same time. So I said, I sat down with my dad and I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Well, it appears to me as if you get the chance to open up businesses from scratch, and I mean building out the office building, get everything put together, putting the phone systems in, hiring all the people, and starting literally from scratch, and then making it successful and moving on." That's probably about as good of a business school as you're ever going to find in a business school. So he said that college is as good, that kind of experience is as good as any college in his opinion. So yeah, I said, well, then let me forego that. I can always go back to go to school. So let me
Right.
forego that, give this a run. And I just literally never looked back.
Well, and I think that was sage advice from your father at a time when the pressure was starting to turn on that everybody's got to go to college. I lament this all the time. When I was growing up, I grew up in Western New York, and there's the New York State school system has something called BOCES. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's Board of Education Cooperative Services. And basically, it's what we know now as career technical education. You could be auto shop, plumbing, electrical, framing. You can go learn all of the trades. And when we were kids, and our parents kind of supported this, and it's kind of really crappy of our parents to have done this, but they allowed us to make that a swear word or slang for stupid. So you were a BOCE or you were BOCES if you were dumb and incapable. And now I look back, and one, I'm embarrassed that any of us didn't see how mean we were being. But on top of that, a whole bunch of my friends who did go to BOCES have the bass boat, the paid off house, the beautiful truck, the amazing vacation twice a year. They're completely paid off on all of their debts. And then a whole bunch of the college crowd is like, wow, my third job at Starbucks is exhausting. And, it's just, we disconnected that back then. So your father, he saw something that nobody back then, not nobody, some people were seeing it, but he was unique.
Well, it's funny that you say about BOCES because we called it VOED. If you were going to VOED, that meant you left early from school and you were going to wrench on a car or whatever. But I'll tell you what's interesting about that was in my high school, we actually had all these shop classes right in the school. So you could walk down the aisle and see someone, changing the transmission on a Mustang, or you could see someone milling a table leg for a dining room table, or wiring an outlet, or welding something, or doing someone's hair, or whatever. And we were in a small town school. It wasn't like we had this beautiful, facility. It was just a regular small town school. But to your point, millions of kids accidentally discovered that back in the 70s and 80s through shop class. And they discovered how cool that was because not every one of them had parents that were carpenters. I mean, they just learned carpentry in high school. So that opportunity was taken away from us. And then they filled those rooms with computers. They cleared the machines out, put computers in there. Now, that's fine. And we all had to learn how to use a computer. I get it. But why did it have to be one or the other? And that sets up the beginning of a perfect storm of what I talked about on Blue Collar Cash, because now you're eliminating millions of kids from accidentally discovering how cool trades are. And then you're putting, instead of them playing around in the backyard, which my brothers and I did, building tree forts with lumber, hammer, nails, that kind of thing, they're playing Minecraft on these things, on cell phones. That's not the same experience. I don't care what anybody tells you, okay? So you have those two forces working against the trades, and then you have colleges who are really good at shaming parents into saying, if you don't come our way, your kid's destined for late night McDonald's shifts. You know what I mean? And it's such a misleading concept. But
well, it's frankly, I'm gonna say it's a lie. It's the colleges are lying to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it was a perfect storm. Those three things made a pretty poisonous cocktail for trade participation. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, to your point, with the exception of a few surgeons, all my good friends that are really successful are all blue collar guys and gals. So
Yeah.
it really is interesting because later on, it's almost like you get this delayed uh-oh moment where the parents turn back and they go, oh my God, I put my kid through school. Now he's got $100,000 in debt, and she can't even afford to pay the payments. And what did I do? She's not even using her degree like
Right.
60% of people who get college degrees. So it's a challenge. It's a shame, but I mean, I'm here trying to, stand on the mountaintop and say, time out, man. We got to go back to the way we used to think here.
Oh, I totally agree. And, it's funny. There's so many products in this world where I'll return it when it doesn't work. And, we were all sold this idea that you go to college and it's going to set you up for a career that will not only be sustaining for a lifestyle you envision, but also at least pay the bill that you incurred for getting it in the first place. It at least would be a zero-sum game, but probably a lot better. And so many times it's not even remotely that. And at what point do we as a society go, okay, I'm going to return the degree. You can have the paper. Didn't do anything. I don't want it. Yeah, I'd like my refund, please.
That's a great point. I was fortunate enough. I've been kind of a quasi Fox News contributor recently, and I was asked the other day. Yeah, I was asked the other day with, I think it was Steve Ducey was asking me, or maybe it was Lawrence. They said, "Is it fair that the government is paying off all these college loans?" And I said, well, the answer is a qualified yes and no, meaning you go ahead and develop a program to help these kids who are hoodwinked by colleges. That's fine, okay? But what about the guy who, maybe started a plumbing business and he wants to get a pickup truck and he needs some tools? Where's his 40 grand at, okay? Where's her money to start her own share in a salon and get all the tools and the training and everything she needs so she can be a hairdresser? Where is that at? Okay. I joked with him because I said, some college decisions are just bad decisions. They're not marketable. Like, Eastern European language translation. Okay. You're never going to get a job doing anything like that. And I use the example, I'm in Ohio. Okay. If I decide to start a surfboard company, okay, that's a bad idea in the state of Ohio, right?
It's a terrible
and if
decision,
it goes
yes.
sideways, I can't expect the government to come in and bail me out. I made a bad call. So therein lies the challenge. All I'm saying is, if you're going to do for one, you can't make the guy with the pickup truck pay for some kid's college education through his taxes. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, and of course that I'll try to stay out of politics on this, but it seems wise that the government just start staying out of things so that rational people can make rational decisions. And if you happen to make an irrational one, you just have to own it.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly
right. Yeah. So I want to get back into your book here for a second. So, and if people haven't seen it, this is Blue Collar Cash. Actually, in a funny series of events, Ken and I were talking before we filmed. We were talking about 2 weeks ago, and I said, "Ooh, I'm going to buy a copy of your book. I like to support the authors." And I knew one was coming, but I didn't know when it was coming from the publishing company. And so I went on Amazon. I bought 2 copies because I happened to catch it on sale. And then the next day, of course, this one showed up. So now I got 3 copies of your book, which, by the way, whoever did the design really did a compelling design. So kudos to them. I really like this book. This is one of those coffee table grade designs. And so just send a hello and a kudos to that person. But if you're watching this and you go, I want a copy of Ken's book, I want you to comment somewhere, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, comment, and I'm going to at random pick somebody and I'll ship you a copy of his book, because I don't need 3 copies. I just need 1. But I need to know why you need his book. I don't want you just to have a coffee table beauty book. I want you to actually do something in this world for yourself or somebody else with a copy of this book. So you've got to reach out to me with a good reason. So prove that you need it, and then I will proudly ship it to you. And unfortunately, I can't autograph it for Ken, but I'll write a little note to you in it.
Well, let's just make it one step better then. You send me their addresses and I'll send them a signed copy then. We'll just do it that way.
Ooh, even better. All right. So we're giving away signed copies of a book now. I like that. So Ken, Last night I'm reading the book and I'm going through, and there's a couple of like tactical things that I want to get to because I usually promise our audience that we're going to actually do things that they can implement. So you've got a goal setting structure that we're going to get to in a minute. But before we do, that whole parenting thing I teased at the beginning has had me on pins and needles. I got to talk to you about this. Your daughter ended up having a health issue that I'll let you describe, and you're very open about it in the book. But can I ask, at what point in the business did this arise? Because not only as a parent, having that fear moment of, oh my child is sick and really sick, but were you running the business at the time? You must have been.
Yeah. So if you think of our business as being 37 years old, and she had this ailment when she was 12, she's now 27. So 15 years ago. So I was in the business 22 years at the time.
Okay. So, one of the things that small businesses have, and you're technically by government standards still a small business because you're under 500 employees. All of us small businesses will encounter hurdles, and personal and professional. But you had a personal hurdle that is one of the biggest hurdles I've ever read about when it comes to a parent / owner of a business. Can you tell us this story? And as much as you can you tell me about both the parent side and how you handled it as a business owner? Because somebody watching this is going to run into something that's a complete storm. And I'd love to know how you weathered this storm.
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. So 15 years ago, we were riding to a softball game, and my daughter said that she had some flashing in one of her eyes, like she couldn't see completely out of one of her eyes, almost like there was a eyelash in it or a shadow. And we weren't quite sure what it was, so we took her to the eye doctor, and he thought it was something simple like to go any further. So he sent us to an ophthalmologist in our town, and he had a little bit more of a worried look on his face. So he looked at it a little deeper, and he was like, I think it's something a little bit bigger than that, and I want to send you to someone who can take some really good pictures, and the only one I know is the Cleveland Clinic. Now, when you hear the Cleveland Clinic, okay, now you start to shake.
That's
a little
scary.
bit, right? So
Yeah.
we went to the Cleveland Clinic, and they took a whole bunch of pictures. And it's one of those things, Josh, where I don't wish this on any human being, but we got there at noon. We sat there all day. We went in as the last appointment. Why, I don't know. They took the pictures, and then the doctor came back and he said, she's got cancer in her eye. And, this is it. Now, it's interesting because the nurse walks in before he starts talking and puts a box of Kleenex in my wife's lap. And I said, did you ask for that? And she
Oh my
said,
God.
no, I didn't ask for that. And then I said, okay, this is not good. And, my wife starts shaking, and, we're like, what are we going to do? So, yeah, the guy said, the only way to cure this is to either go see these folks in Philadelphia who are geniuses at this. They're like the Lewis and Clark of how to get, eye cancer taken care of. Or she might have to lose her eye altogether. And so we went. I raised for 3 nights. I didn't sleep, and I looked at the internet, and I looked at all the possibilities. And they finally, I found this Will's Eye Center in Philadelphia, Dr. Carol and Larry Shields, and so we went out to see them. And I busted my way in. They had a 3-month wait. I literally busted my way in. A friend of mine had a plane, and my daughter was 300 miles away at a camp. And I was like, what are we going to do? So we grabbed that. He said, take my plane and use it as much as you need and get that girl cured. So we flew all around the place to Philadelphia finally. And they confirmed it. And they said, yeah, the tumor is just a little too big for us to treat it with our normal way of treating it. So I remember this, she lost her eye. She had the operation, and we were on the way back to the hotel, and I remember her seeing a homeless guy on the street begging for money. And she looked at him and she looked at us and she goes, well, at least I don't have it as bad as this guy does. Meaning,
What? She's 12 and she's got that level of perspective?
Yeah. And it's hard to even talk about, but that was the moment where I was like, wow, this girl is braver than I could ever be. And, so I just remember that we went through that process, and she ended up making bracelets for all the nurses, those little bracelets that you make out of braids. And
oh, that's amazing.
when we got home, I was like, Nicole, I said, everybody goes through, in my opinion, 2 or 3 really horrific things in their lifetime, like things that you don't think you can come back from. And this is one of them. So, I think you got one of them out of the way early, and we just have to figure out where we're going to go from here. Well, she's like, Dad, it's going to be fine. We're going to get through it. And we did. And I have to tell you, it was 5 more years of scans and ultrasounds every 6 months and blood tests.
Yeah. They never consider it fully done, do they?
It's horrific. But I will tell you this, early on in my business, I decided that in order for me to be any good at my company, I need to be irrelevant to the day-to-day. Meaning I wasn't going to be one who was going to be so involved in the company that I couldn't leave for a minute to make something else happen. So I surrounded my people and I said, listen, I want to take this thing as far as I can go. I want to get into other opportunities. We are somewhat restricted by landmass where we are, but there's other things we can do. So if we all just think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, meaning you all run this company thinking, okay, I'm going to run my division as though it's mine. Okay, I'm going to be responsible for the cost, the input, the output, the profit, everything, efficiencies, hiring, the whole 9 yards. Then I could create a bunch of little mini owners within the company who were thinking along the entrepreneurial line. That allowed me the freedom, Josh, to just get out of my company for a couple of months and just go out and just take care of Nicole and do whatever I had to do to get her well. And I wasn't gone a couple of months, but I knew I could have been. But I was gone quite a bit, coming back and forth trying to get her healthy.
Oh, of course you were.
I'm happy to say that she just had our first grandchild, and
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, it's really something. So we love her to death. She's an amazing little girl, Vivian Rose, and all I can tell you is life will throw you these curveballs. Life will throw you these challenges, and if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be ready to say, "Okay, I'm out." And for those of you that are holding on to your companies because your ego says, "Oh, I have to do it all," me boss, you employee, right? Pound your chest kind of thing. For those of you who think, I do, I set all the programs, I set all the parameters, I fix things, I repair things, I yell at people, I do all that stuff. Get out of that, okay? Because the more entrepreneurs you surround yourself with, the more you're going to drive your company to heights that you could never do by yourself.
Your book is full of really important stuff. And I think the most important thing that you just relayed, it just happened. That parenting aspect where you dropped everything for your kid is something that I think parents in entrepreneurship, I know I was the son of an entrepreneur who had a lot of different businesses and a lot of things. And I'll be honest, he didn't drop things for his children. And so it left a lot of gaps. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that end up struggling with, do I work the business or do I work the family? And they have that conflict because they haven't done what you did, which was set up the entrepreneurial values and systems so you could focus on family when it was time. And that lesson alone, hopefully for our audience, was gold. But it sounds to me like when you were a kid and you decided you're going to be a ditch digger and pay some simple kid bills so you could go out bowling and on dates. I can't tell, and maybe you can help me with this. I can't tell if you were a driven person because you were driven for success or if you were driven because you were just trying to check those very teenage boxes. But so start there. Were you driven? Are you a naturally driven person?
Well, first off, I think So I work a lot with visualization, and I teach and I coach a lot of visualization. And to be honest with you, I think we use a lot of terms, and yours is a good one, naturally driven. So if I asked you to take a crayon and a piece of paper and draw naturally driven, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. You could write the words down, but you wouldn't be able to draw what driven is. Well, driven to
Totally.
what? Well, driven
Right.
to succeed. Succeed in what? Well, succeed in my life plan. What's the life plan? I want to live like this. Aha, now we're on to something. So was I very good at seeing what I wanted my future to look like, little bits at a time? Yeah, I went after, my father had 5 sons. He made $14,000 a year chopping lettuce at Kroger's. So
Wow.
money didn't go very far. And so he said, you know what? I can keep you clothed and fed. I can keep you sheltered. I can give you, basic protections. I can do as much fun as we can afford to do. But beyond that, if you want something, you got to find a way to go get it. So I would get a job. I wanted a new aluminum baseball bat. I'd get a job. Boom. I could say, okay, I'm going to work for 6 hours. I can go buy that aluminum baseball bat. So it was always like this risk reward thing for me. And I did that my whole life. I still do it. So, if you have a vision that's powerful enough, and here's the thing about it, Josh, we all have the ability to visualize. We all have the ability to say, what is my favorite X, Y, Z? What are all my favorite categories in life? What kind of house do I want to live in? What kind of car do I want to drive? What kind of vacations do I want to take? What kind of spiritual moments do I want to have? What are my hobbies going to look like? What are my sports going to look like? What's my give back, my charity moments going to look like? If you can literally draw that out, and I mean physically with crayons and cardboard like we do, okay? You can create a vision for what you want your perfect nirvana to be. In the book, I call it comfort, peace, and freedom. And you can draw out that picture for yourself and say, wow, if I could live like that, that would really be cool. Now, the difference between, buying your first aluminum baseball bat and creating a life for yourself is just a series of a bunch of steps over a bunch of years and a bunch of time. And so you literally draw this picture for yourself, pick the things out that you can get the quickest and easiest, and start knocking them down, almost like you're building out a puzzle, the puzzle being your life, right? But here's the thing about building puzzles, Josh. You can't build a puzzle without one important ingredient, and that is the box, because the box has the picture on the front of it. If you don't have that box, it's going to take you a really long time to build that puzzle, okay? So because you don't
That's
see where
right.
you're going. And that's how life is for me. Everything to me is a box, a puzzle box. And it's like, okay, I want to do that, and I'm going to go after that one piece at a time. And I really think the word driven is a great word for, were you very visual back then? And yes, I was. And I still am to this day, and I think we can all be.
That's amazing. Actually, I enjoyed the truth that you put in your book about how you make all of your employees get out a box of 64 Crayolas and a big sheet of paper, and you're making your own team go crisscross applesauce like a preschooler, but they're dreaming on paper, and I think there's a beauty to you pulling them out of their comfort zone. I'm sure they'd want to do it on a Word doc somewhere, but you're saying, no, we got to do something different in order to unlock this. I really like that.
Well, if you think about it, the last time you held a crayon in your hand, if it weren't for your kids or maybe your grandkids or whatever, the last time you held a crayon in your hand for your own personal edification was probably when you were 5 years old. And when you were 5 years old, you had no stress, you had no worries, you had no job, you had no career, you had no bills, you had none of that. So you were literally at probably one of your most creative points in your lifetime. Someone could say, here's a blank sheet of paper, I want you to draw a horse. Okay, cool. And you went out drawing a horse or a rocket or whatever it was, a sunshine, whatever it might have been. So why not get people back to that period of time when they open the box, they smell the box, remember the crayons, how they used to smell when they were brand new. And then just let your imagination go, draw that perfect vacation in every detail. Because once you see it, and I did this thing with Jarek Robbins, who's Tony Robbins' son. He talked about the fact that there's now science connected to what your brain visualizes, and that is you have these electrodes that fire, these neurons that fire in your brain when you see something, it makes those neurons go faster and faster, especially if it's something that you really want. So as you see things more and more over and over and over, those neurons fire so fast that they become one conscious thought. And that builds to the point where your brain now thinks it actually owns that thing. So what it does, it kicks your body into these involuntary movements, and it kicks your brain into these involuntary awarenesses. So you're now walking the planet accepting that thing to come into your life. You're acting towards getting that thing. And that's the cool part. You're actually scientifically wired to attract the things into your life that you want for yourself. And it starts with protection and hunger and, clothing, whatever it might be. Those basic instincts can build into very complicated things like cars and houses and vacations and charity moments and spiritual moments and sports and hobbies. Those can build into that. So it's free. It requires no training. Let's start using the visual side of our brain and let the power of that bring these things into our life and then live the lives that we want. Because, Josh, you and only you know what your favorite color is, your favorite car is, your favorite house is, your favorite, all these things. Why would you ever let someone else dictate what your life should be like? They don't know who you are. Only you do, really, at your core. So allow the power of that to work for you. Let these things come in your life and then just, live a life of comfort, peace, and freedom, which, in my opinion, is really the only way to live.
This is the most brilliant extension of the law of attraction and the work that Napoleon Hill did in Think and Grow Rich, and I'm a big Napoleon Hill guy, so I know what my major definite purpose is. I have my statement that I say to myself every day, and I've done that work for years, and to the credit of that work, and we're here now, which is great. But I've never heard it articulated that way, where you can take the time to make it visual. And is there an element of that tactile with the crayons where you're actually physically doing it too that comes into play? Or is it really the act of seeing what you created that's causing that? I mean, is there more science behind the physicality of it?
There is. So I can think to myself, okay, I want a Corvette. And I think of the Corvette. And I think of the car. But I don't put that car into context into the brochure of me driving down Highway 1 in California or wherever that is, or in Florida, or wherever I'm going to be. I don't think of having, this top down and the wind blowing through my hair and cruising through on a bright sunny day on the way to a picnic, or taking my family, or creating a memory with that, going to dinner somewhere, some nice restaurant, whatever. So the answer is yes, because you take these objects and you put them down on paper, and what you're creating is your own life brochure. And quick story. I'm a car guy. I love to collect cars. I bought my first Porsche, and it took me 7 years from the day I decided I want to buy it. And I actually made a plan for 7 years. I went into the dealer and I said, in 7 years, I'm going to have a certain part of my company developed to the point where I can afford my first sports car. And so I grabbed a brochure from him, and he thought I was nuts. Like, yeah, sure. Year 2, I went back in there, got another brochure. He still thought I was nuts. Year 3, year 4. By year 5, the same guy, he works there, his name's Paul. He said to me, you know what, Rusk? I actually think that you're actually going to do this now. I'm starting to believe that you're going to do this. And I said, well, because I am. Year 5, year 6, I got the brochure, put it on my nightstand. Year 6.5, I went in and I said, how long does it take to order one of these cars? He says 6 months. I go, good, put the order in. I'll be back in 6 months. And 7 years to that day, I bought that first car. Now, I didn't care that it took me 7 years. It could have been 5, 3, 7, 9, didn't matter. I just wanted to make certain that thing was going to come into my life at some point, because that's what I like to do. And so the brochure is everything. You don't buy when you look at a brochure for a pickup truck, you don't just see a blank truck on a piece of paper. You see it hauling hay at the farm, or you see it hauling your buddies' four-wheelers, or you see it doing things, creating memories for you and your family. That's what they're telling you. Have this thing in your life and go create awesome memories with it. It's not the thing. It's never the thing. It's what memories you
Right.
create with that thing. So yeah, taking crayons and taking the visions out of your head, they take them from someday things to 2 day things. Okay. They make them real. And when you put them down on paper, you're literally creating that brochure that only 1% of the population is willing to do and hang it on the wall so you can see it and then allow that attraction to work for you.
Yeah, and I love it. We won't have time in this to go over it, but when you read the book, audience, dear audience, he really lays out that, goal setters, the ones who actually move the needle in their lives, there are 1%. And so he breaks the entire thing down. But if you aren't following through and seeing fruit, it probably means you're not as much of a goal setter as you think you are. And it's kind of a come to Jesus moment when you read this, and I promise you'll go, oh shoot, I need to be better at goal setting. Because what was the stat in your book that you said, how much more does somebody earn when they're one of the 1%ers of goal setters?
Yeah, so they followed that 1% person that was willing to do this, write the goals down, put them up on the wall, and look at them every day. They
Yeah.
followed those people for 10 years, and they earned 9 times more money in that 10-year period than the other 99%. And it's only
And that's
because
humbling.
that's only because they allowed the power of their brain and the attraction mechanism in your brain to work for them. And it was just a natural occurrence that all these things were going to come into their life, and they had to find a way to go make that happen, which means they kept improving their jobs, they kept improving their position, they kept improving their salaries, and then that's what happened.
Phenomenal. So let's wind down this conversation on how we can become 1%ers, because you actually have a 5-step process of goal setting in here that you lay out. I told you I dog-eared this thing. Like, look, I don't know if you can see this, but I have highlights in here. I have dog ears. I devoured this book yesterday, and it's page 187. All right, for those people following along in the text. And you lay out these 5 steps, and I'm sure you know them by heart, so I'm not going to read your book on air here. Can you walk us through the Cliff Notes?
Yeah, real quickly, just like anything else, you have to tell yourself that I'm now a different person. I'm now thinking a different way, almost like a smoker who quits. They don't quit smoking. They say, I am not a smoker anymore. They identify as someone different. I'm not a smoker anymore. So you have to literally take the first step and congratulate yourself and say, okay, I'm going to allow this new person, this new way of thinking to just flood into my whole body. And I'm going to congratulate myself for doing that. Most people don't take that step. And that's where they tend to fail, because they revert back quickly to what they used to be like. So that's the first step. The second step is just to decide what that picture is going to be. What is that picture? What is that thing that I want to come into my life? Okay. And get a real clear brochure of what that is. And I mean, you got to wake up in the morning thinking about this. You got to go to bed at night thinking about this. Okay. That much power behind the brochure of what you want this thing to do. That's step 2. Step 3 is then just to analyze, to break down what that thing is going to take in order to come into your life. Okay. I want to pay off this nagging visa bill. Okay. It's going to take me $50 a week for a year to pay this visa bill off. And so I've broken down the steps to achieving this thing, something I never thought I could do, or saving for my first used car or my first house, or whatever it might be. You break it down into absolute, pieces and steps and pathways. I call them paths, like almost like you're walking on a patio stone and you're walking down this path to get this thing. Once you have the thing designed, $50 a week for a year, or $20 a week for 2 years, or whatever it's going to take to get this thing, then you go and actually put that goal into action in step 4. And step 4 is by simply making it automatic. Like it's not an if goal anymore. It's only a when goal. It's going to happen. And by that, you go to your payroll clerk or whatever it is, and you say, I want you to take $20 a week out of my check, put it in this account. Don't let me have any access to it. I don't want to see it, think about it, hear about it, other than until when I'm done, when I'm done with this thing and I need that to go great, make this goal happen. So now you're putting it into action, which is a step that most people don't take. The final one is just like me on the diving board. Okay. I wasn't going to jump off that high board when I was 5 years old unless I had 4 of my buddies down there egging me on. I would have bailed 10 times before I jumped off the high dive. Okay. But because those four guys were down there saying, you can do this, man, you got this, jump, you got this. I looked down at them and they were my support system. So sharing that goal is extremely important because someone else has to be as into that goal as you are. So they have their hand on your shoulder. And when you stumble, and you will, they pick you up and they say, keep walking, man. Don't turn around. Keep walking towards that goal. You want this so bad. It's going to happen. And I'm going to help you stay on that path. Having someone to share a goal with seems obvious, but the power of picking the right people is beyond obvious. You want to pick people that are so go forward thinking people, and they might not even be in your immediate circle. They might not even be in your family.
Yeah, family can hold you back sometimes if they're not dreamers like you.
Yeah. You pick the wrong person, and they're like, they're like belonging to the someday club, which someday never comes. So yeah, you share with the right people, and these are people that you admire that maybe in their own lives have been successful. And I love doing that for the people in my office. I love being the go-to share guy, So we use those 5 steps, and you will achieve anything you want in your life. I mean, anything that you really want that bad is going to come towards you. And I encourage people to try it because it's worked for me for a very long time.
That's unbelievable. I hope, entrepreneurs, that you have the guts to play that back a couple of times so that you can actually make sure that you've been taking those steps. And the one that surprised me, honestly, Ken, was the congratulatory one at the beginning. I mean, a lot of this stuff felt fairly familiar, but that seeing it as if it is, so it's kind of almost a faith statement, and then congratulating myself on the accomplishment of taking this on is something that I've never heard it that way, and I think I'm totally adopting that. I love this approach.
Well, the final thing. So the reason I throw the word someday in there a lot is when you look up someday in the dictionary, it says at some point in the future, which is not yet determined. Okay, so imagine
not yet determined. That's scary.
Imagine I say this to you. Hey, Josh, I'm going to start working out someday. Okay. I might as well be saying to you, I'm going to start working out at some time in the future that is not yet determined. I mean, what a waste of air. What a waste of time. I just insulted you by even telling you that because I wasted your time as well. Right. So if you think about it, I'm going to clean out I'm going to clean out my basement at some point in the future, which is not yet determined. It's just a complete waste of time. So the reason I put congratulate in there is because you're changing yourself from that someday definition to a 2-day definition, which means I'm going to clean out that garage this Saturday or that basement. I'm going to start working out on Tuesday at 4:00 with this trainer that I hired. Whatever. There's a huge difference between someday and 2-day, and people live in this someday world as some type of a buffering excuse to not actually do what they really want to do. So that's where I congratulate step 1, because you're changing your mind from someday to 2-day, and now you're off to the races. That's
awesome. Ken, I cannot thank you enough for all of this clarity. It's amazing how like a 1-degree pivot on a concept, if you think of a sniper changing 1 degree and they're trying to shoot a mile away, that's the difference between being completely off and being dead on. And that you've given us a couple of 1-degree moments today that may very well be the difference maker for a whole bunch of the audience. So I cannot thank you enough for writing this book. I cannot thank you enough for bringing the sexy back to blue collar. I think this is a movement that I know Mike Rowe is frequently credited with having started the blue collar dirty jobs fascination again. And in many ways, I think he was right, but it's people like you who are amplifying it to a level that maybe will actually get back on track. So from a person who has been pounding this hard for years, thank you for being who you are and writing this book. How do people find you? How do we follow your content? How do we find your book?
Well, if you go to kenrusk.com, you'll find a few things. You'll find the book there. You'll also find a course that I built. So many times people read books and then they just put them up on the shelf and they never act on them.
Yeah.
So I built a 2-day course instead of a someday course. So you can look at this book, you can read it, and even if you don't read it, the course references pages you can go back to. And
Awesome.
I built that course for people. I give the money to charity. It's just a way for me to help shorten the learning curve for entrepreneurs behind me. So you can find the course there and the book there at kenrusk.com. I also have a foundation that I'm doing where I give this material away for free to Gold Star families and to veterans and people that are out there trying to help us get the freedoms that we enjoy every day. It's called the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation. So I'm doing that as well. And you can find that at veteransuccess.org. So we're doing a lot of cool things with that. You can find the book anywhere on Amazon or iBooks or Barnes and Nobles, any of those kinds of things. And
Awesome.
Again, it's been a labor of love. My world was really good before I did this book, so I didn't do it to make money. I help other people out with the proceeds. So yeah, it's been cool.
That's amazing. Well, it's official now that when I grow up, I'm going to be like Ken Rusk. And I've been told I may never fully grow up, and I suppose that's a little bit okay. But Ken,
that's okay.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, you're permanently on my friends list. I am thrilled to know you, and I hope everybody runs out and gets a copy of this and starts taking action. If you are listening and watching this, audience, and I will come over here for a second, if you're listening and watching this, and this is resonating with you, I want you to take a couple of steps. One, go and actually read this book so that you can fully internalize it. Two, I love the fact that he's got a course. Take it. Like he said, the money goes to charity. There's all of this is right and none of this is wrong. But then three, I want you to think of other people in your world who are entrepreneurs or on a future entrepreneurial trek, because this is something that can be a catalyst to kick their butts, to move them forward into actually being a 2-day person, not a someday person, which, by the way, I am taking and running with that. Someday, 2-day, oh my gosh, is that good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. It's been a pleasure. And I love talking about this stuff. I really love how passionate you are about it too, which really helps when you do an interview like this. So I'm happy to come back anytime. This is good stuff. We really appreciate it. Yeah,
hey, can I add one thing? And I'm going to put this out into the world so people hear it. If you're a car guy, I live down the street from where they do the annual Mecum auction in Florida. Have you been?
I watch it all the time, but I've not been there, but it's on my bucket list to do for sure.
Okay. I mean, you have a condo here in Florida. It's not that long a drive. Next year in January, you and I need to meet up. We need to go to the Mecum auction. I don't even need to buy anything. I mean, seriously, grab some street meat from a vendor and then go walk around the cars there. They had 4,000 of the most gorgeous, if not totally inventive, because some of them were complete like recreations of the imagination of what a vehicle was. Oh my God, it was amazing. So 2 car guys hitting Mecum next year. That's going to be a thing.
Let's do it. I'm in.
All right. Audience, friends, entrepreneurs, it's Josh. It's Bootstrapped Unicorns. This type of content is normal on our channels now. If you're not subscribing, following, liking, engaging with us, what are you doing? If you just found this show, go find we are on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, every social. We're out there. Hang out with us. And a personal invitation, I have the Bootstrapped Unicorns Facebook group that you are welcome to join. There's a couple of questions in there that we want to make sure you're actually an entrepreneur. There is zero selling in there. It's guys like me, guys like Ken. You should join it. It's only recently started. It's a small group. And what we do there is we talk about the journey and help each other. That's it. It's the whole point of it. I plan on selling you nothing in there. This is about the journey and growing together. So please come in and join it. Again, it's Bootstrapped Unicorns, Entrepreneurship and Marketing, and it's on Facebook. Go find it. Until next time, I am grateful for your attention. I'll see you on the next show.